everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. In this video, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at a book called the Monolith Sourcebook, and we'll talk about a key word in that title in a few seconds, but you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner of the book, Modiphius Entertainment is at the helm of the creation of this sourcebook, and again, monolith being a key word in the title definitely gives clues away as to what this relates to. And this book itself is obviously entrenched in Robert E. Howard's Conan universe, has the artwork there, but this artwork, as well as the keyword monolith, probably gives enough clues as to where this is leading. Yes, this source book is actually connected to the Conan miniatures board game created by Monolith. What's really cool, and the reason why I'm showing this on the channel in the first place, is Modiphius released this book in tandem with Monolith in order to create a solo and cooperative adventure or campaign that you can use from this source book in tandem with the Conan miniatures board game. But not just the content that comes inside the board game, there's also some released tile packs, which are geomorphic tiles, which Modiphius has created specifically for the campaign that can be found inside this book. So they've taken a game in which was not playable solo and created an official way to play it on top of releasing specific tiles for it. Now, what's really kind of ironic about all this is that I looked through my videos in the past on Rolling Solo and noticed way back at the very beginning of the channel, when it was in its early stages, I did an unboxing video for Conan the Board Game when the Kickstarter first came in. Now, what's kind of hilarious about this is it's the only game that I've ever unboxed on the channel, from my recollection anyway, that didn't have an official solo variant. And I didn't continue that trend onwards, of course, because that's the purpose of this channel, is to focus in the solo and cooperative capacity. But it's just kind of funny to see that I unboxed this game out of pure excitement way back in the day when it first landed, maybe kind of putting some seeds in the ground, hoping that someday, somehow, a Conan solo or cooperative variant would come out of it, and it looks like we now actually have an official one. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go ahead and we're going to check out the source book. I'm going to show you exactly the effort and also the areas of this book that pertain to solo and cooperative play, the campaign that was created to be played in that realm, and then we're going to take a look at the geomorphic tile packs that were also released by Modiphius. When you first open up the source book, you're going to be greeted by this beautiful sprawling map of the world of Conan, and this is going to be your entryway into the book, which then leads you into the table of contents, and then where I'd like to focus, the solo and cooperative components. Here is a look at the table of contents within the source book. You'll see it's broken into a number of different chapters. Of course, we're going to go through these at a high level right now and then pinpoint a couple of the chapters we're going to dive into a little bit further so you can see exactly what's inside this thing. So first off, chapter number 1 is the board game campaign. The biggest thing to mention with this particular section is notice that the titles here are actually different than chapter number 3. So that's interesting to note, and we'll take a look at that more so in a few minutes when we start skimming through the book. Chapter number 2 is the role-playing adventure, and of course it wouldn't be a Modiphius product if it didn't have an element of role-playing buried inside of the content. So again, giving you that avenue to go ahead and use this book in that capacity. Chapter number 3, solo and cooperative play. Now this is where I get excited because this is exactly why I wanted to pick this up, and this goes from page 51 all the way to 81, being 30 full pages in about 100 or so page book in total. Is a nice chunk of specific solo and cooperative work inside of here. And on top of that, you'd think it would end there, but chapter number 4 rolls around with scenario creation from 85 until 97, adding another 12 pages or so in terms of building your own kingdom, steps for design, balancing, using the Conan tile packs, which are those geomorphic tiles we will actually see later in this video. There's also creating solo and cooperative content. That piece on page 95 is extremely useful because it's actually allowing the community to begin starting to create content that is in the solo and cooperative realm with official rules and an official benchmark in terms of how they should be created. So you're talking about 42 pages of a 100 or so page book, almost half the book devoted to solo and cooperative type content. That's really awesome, again making it even more worth it for solo gamers to check out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to skim through a couple of these chapters that we're not focusing on. So chapter 1, I'd like to show you a couple things there. We'll check out chapter 2 quickly as well, and then we're going to move into the primary area, chapter number 3, and so on. So here's a look at chapter number 1, the board game campaign. I want to talk a little bit about this so everyone understands what this actually implies. So I'm going to read this section right at the beginning that gives a nice overview of what's going on here in chapter number 1, plus some of the requirements to actually enjoy this. So again, just for clarity, this is specific not to the solo and cooperative component of this book, but more so to the regular play style of Conan the Board Game, or potentially incorporating role-playing elements as well. So it says right here, here are presented 10 new scenarios for Monolith's Conan board game, which can be played in a variety of contexts. All of these may be played independently, but the first 8 are best experienced sequentially as part of a unique campaign mode. When played in this way, many of the scenarios will have consequences for the following game. If the hero players win, they will be rewarded. If the overlord player wins, they will be rewarded, or the heroes will be penalized. Furthermore, players who also own the Conan role-playing game may choose to play through a second campaign, see Chapter 2 Role-Playing Adventure, which serves as a sequel to this one. To play this second campaign, players need a copy of the Conan core book. So again, this particular source book is not a replacement of the role-playing book that Modiphius offers. You'll need that role-playing book in order to enjoy that side of the experience if you want to take this on in a role-playing mentality. But if you're playing this simply for the board game, Monolith board game, you can still use this in a a Overlord versus Heroes type game, which is very standard for that title. Now down here in the very bottom left-hand corner are requirements to absorb or use this chapter number 1 content. It says 5 of these scenarios require maps from the Kickstarter's King's Pledge. So that's specifically noted there because during the Conan Kickstarter, of which there was actually a couple, you were able to pick up what's called a King Pledge to get some extra stretch goals, and those are going to be used here. So you're going to need that. Now also make note, if you don't have that content, there has been different teasers released from Monolith that Conan may be and is likely coming back to Kickstarter in the near future. This was teased just a little bit ago, so if you missed out on the chance to get a King's Pledge, those types of things are likely to come back in that Kickstarter along with a whole bunch more content, kind of like the reboot with Batman, for instance, with second season. Now down below here it also says the other 5 are going to utilize tiles from the Conan Tile Sets, so Perilous Ruins and Forgotten Cities, and Forbidden Places and Pits of Horror. Now these are talking about the geomorphic tiles that you can pick up specifically from Modiphius, which I will show during this video, so you can get an idea as to what they look like and whether or not there's something you'd like to pick up. But you'll need a chunk of these, if not all of them, incorporated with this source book to enjoy a chunk of this particular chapter 1, as it takes up 5 of those scenarios. Those who do not own the Modiphius tile sets, though, may still play the campaign, but will need to skip over the scenarios that require them, as well as any endgame victory conditions. So you can still enjoy it, you're just not going to get the full value of what's inside this book. Now our focus is not in chapter number 1, because this is not where the solo and cooperative elements come into play, but I do want to show you what's in this chapter for those interested. So I'm just going to flip through a couple of pages so you can see not only the artwork, but some of the illustrations. Of course, they're referencing some of the tiles that come in those sets we'll see later on as well. And it also shows kind of how they're laid out. And you can see that these tiles are more so in the square form, and we'll see those up close and personal a little bit later. Plus you're seeing some of the contents from the Monolith Conan board game that are coming into play within this scenario, for instance. So this particular one is Blasphemers from the Past. So here you go, you got your opening prompt, you're winning the game, so what happens with that, narrative beforehand, and your setup to go into. And of course, as you progress through this campaign, you're going to have your setup, win conditions, what happens if you win or lose, consequences if you're playing it in a role-playing fashion, and then you move into your next scenario. So in this case, the Bridge of Death, for instance, and then you continue your story along. And what's really cool is that they didn't just take this regular way of playing Conan the Board Game in terms of having multiple players and just carbon copy the solo campaign in this book. They actually have two separate campaigns that are literally different. So you're not going to see duplication, and you'll see that when we hit the solo and cooperative chapter. So again, two different ways to experience this one. A Glimpse into the Dark is number 4. The Woman of the Mist is number 5. Death on the Tide. So again, you're starting to see some of the larger boards coming from that particular King pledge. Of Man and Beast. There's another giant board. The Caller from the Depths. Like, some of these are just really spectacular. Again, it's probably hard to see from a distance, but don't worry, I will be showing these tiles up close without wrap on them, so you'll be able to get a really good idea as to quality. They did a fantastic job of making these smaller tiles modular in a way, and also still holding true to the design of what was inside of Monolith's board game, so they don't look strange when paired together, which is really awesome. Now, what I haven't seen yet, I don't believe, is any mixture of the smaller geomorphic tiles from Modiphius with the tiles inside Monolith's core sets. So that might happen somewhere in here, but I haven't seen it as of yet. It looks like everything's been standalone, one or the other so far, and that might be on purpose to avoid individuals that don't, or to avoid the conflict, I guess, of individuals only owning one of those tile sets. So you can see right here, this is where it gets into chapter number 2, the role-playing adventure. So again, to fully enjoy this, you're going to want to pick up Modiphius's Conan role-playing book, which is separate from this source book, and then you'll be able to enjoy this more so. You also have yourself a nice little bookmarker here that kind of popped out as soon as we hit the role-playing section, which is nice. So you can keep your spot inside the book as you roll along. So we'll just keep on trucking through the role-playing pages here. And then we hit solo and cooperative play. This is exciting. So it says a different approach. So it says, after hundreds of hours of playing, writing, and testing scenarios for Monolith's Conan board game, we began to branch out, wondering what other play modes could be possible. A solo cooperative mode has been perhaps the single most asked for feature. Second to this, it has often been requested that there are more options for players to choose heroes alternate to the suggested heroes in most of the scenarios. Bearing these points in mind, we set out to create a mode that would satisfy both desires. Included within this chapter is a rule set that allows you to play through a 9-scenario campaign that removes the player versus player setup of the Overlord. Additionally, players will be able to choose their own heroes from a variety of archetypes and even achieve a small measure of character progression. This rules set is not meant to be the definitive method of solo and cooperative play for Monolith's Conan board game, nor is it meant to replace the original game or diminish its spirit and style. It is an option, and one that hopefully gives players a springboard from where their own ideas may leap. And this is a really cool approach, because not only are they providing that base level rule set, but they're basically cheering on the community to take this and run with it. There's also a nice little section here about the Conan tile sets that Modiphius has released. So it says most of these scenarios offered in this chapter use tiles from Forbidden Places and Pits of Horror and Perilous Ruins and Forgotten Cities, 2 tile sets for Conan role-playing game. So that's where these particular tile sets originally came from, is they were introduced for the role-playing game. Each scenario uses 1 or 2 of the tiles for smaller setups and skirmishes. And just below that, we have the solo cooperative play rules, and it says the following optional rules assume the players have a thorough knowledge of how to play Monolith's Conan board game. These rules are not reprinted here, but are referenced herein, so prior experience playing the game is required. So that's nice. They're getting right to the meat of the solo and cooperative rules, expecting that people have already played this in the multiplayer variant, or I shouldn't even say variant, the official way to play the game, one versus many. Solo cooperative rules allow players to play through specifically designed scenarios that eliminate the role of the overlord. Instead, the players themselves will control the overlord's tiles and miniatures. By using a system of automated commands, the players move the pieces and roll the dice against their own heroes. The players do not need to think or strategize for the overlord tiles and miniatures, but rather follow the commands. The rules and the scenario will do the strategizing for the overlord. So here's a look at the next page within chapter number 3. We've got sections for the Overlord turn quick reference, activating the Overlord tiles, determining the target hero, how you're going to be handling that in terms of path of least resistance, hindering and ranged attacks, hindering and melee attacks, tiles with miniatures in different zones. All of those rules are established here to give you that base to be able to move forward. Also showing you how you're going to be actually managing the river, essentially, in terms of the Overlord and how the commands are going to interact with that river. And as we go along through chapter number 3, we have solo and co-op scenarios now being specified, so you can play smaller and faster setups. You've got a skills overview here, which could have something to do with that progression they were talking about. So that's quite interesting. Difficulty ratings, of course, if you want to spice things up. The campaign specific rules, how you select your heroes, your defeats and deaths, spells, archetypes and starting equipment. So again, you're really building a character or an archetype to bring into these scenarios, which is quite awesome. I think that's where they were trying to have some flexibility in terms of your character and actually building them up from the start versus a canned character that's been created for you. Progression in books, victory points and rank, all here. You got your victory points in terms of whether you perform. Oh, that's actually really cool. So there's different levels of how you can describe your victory. And I don't know if this is overall or per scenario, but they have ranks here. So Perfumed, Flop, Conqueror, King, and Legend are the 4 different ones. And then we've got the Lost Scrawlings of Skelos. So this is the beginning of an 8-part campaign. This is where things get quite exciting because you got the narrative going on. You've got a glimpse at where you're located on the world map, an entranceway into a campaign in a solo capacity. This is so exciting because I still can't believe this actually really came about in the first place, because I just absolutely loved the content of that original Conan game, and it's just so cool that they went to this extra step to grab people that weren't able to enjoy this, or maybe this game sat on the shelf and didn't get the gameplay or game time that it needed. So now you have another reason to pull this thing off the shelf, and that's never a bad thing. We've got Demon of the Depths as the very first opening, chapter to this campaign, starting with a sea voyage, it seems, and a demon in the water. We got the sleeping serpent here using some of the Geomorphic Tile Set tiles. Secrets in stone. We're looking like we're heading out to a very cold environment there. The Sacrifice of the Black Ones here, and this one looks like it's kind of an entranceway into the forest. Super cool. The Killing Floor. This is kind of a battle happening across a bridge. Dreams in the Lotus House. I remember this gigantic board, one of the most beautiful ones inside the Conan board game. That's actually quite a large sprawl for that page size on that particular scenario. It goes across 3 pages or so. Horror of the Fens. This is an interesting layout, so that's kind of a different design. You can tell there's a couple tiles kind of overlapping each other to create a very different and unique layout there. A surprise entrance over here for chapter 7, or I should say scenario 7. Halls of the Scarlet Citadel is the final one in this gigantic map here on the top left-hand corner. So again, just a whole bunch of content, and then we get to an even more exciting portion of the book. Chapter number 4 is all about scenario creation. So let's go ahead and read about what is the purpose of the design behind creating your own scenarios. Monolith's Conan board game is scenario-based. This means that each scenario has been carefully written, tested, and balanced to ensure the games are fun and fair for both the overlord and the hero players. In some cases, scenarios do slightly favor one side, but typically they are as balanced as possible so that neither side gains an unfair advantage. To achieve this balance requires a careful approach, but once a few key concepts are understood, players should have no trouble creating dynamic and thrilling scenarios using the plethora of available game boards and miniatures. The tile sets made available with the Conan role-playing game, which are these geomorphic tiles, present new and exciting options for players of the Conan board game. This book contains many scenarios, some of them written for these tiles, but it will be up to you, the player, to write and share your own scenarios with the rest of the gaming community. So we have down here at the bottom, building your own kingdom. So this chapter is all about offering a step-by-step guidelines on how to create your own custom scenarios using the resources available from the role-playing game and board game. First, the main components of each scenario are explained in detail with some tips on how to creatively manage them in the writing process. Once these ideas are familiar, we will look closely at how each component will affect balance. This is just one way to approach scenario creation. As you become increasingly familiar with the game, you may have your own ideas on how to approach this process. None of these rules need to be followed strictly. There are just merely guidelines that serve as a starting point and should help you look at a scenario design from a holistic perspective. Though scenario design is a meticulous and somewhat complex process, it will be helpful to consider the following 3 guidelines throughout the writing process. The very first one is you're going to want to be flexible. Don't write yourself into a corner or become too set on certain ideas. Your concepts must be fluid and open to change as needed. Maintain your overall idea, but be flexible in how you bring it to life. Making small changes first. While you are creating ideas, they're going to come quickly to you, and this is a good thing, but it can cause you to lose focus on your original idea, and it also threatens to erase progress that you've made. And the third thing you're going to want to do is aim for fun. Of course, when you're creating all these different scenarios, or even just creating one, you're always trying to have fun with it. So again, these are all guidelines you can use to help you to build those solo and cooperative scenarios to then share with the community so others can enjoy them, and also give you tips on how to improve them as well. So this book is full of those steps all the way through, and the major pieces needed to go ahead and create that, going through a number of different steps, as you can see, all the way up to step 6 here. Then it starts talking about balance, turn limit. So really you're getting a very detailed look at even the design process behind what likely was even the original game, even though that was tailored towards one versus many mentality. Some of that probably translates still here into the solo and cooperative variants. So you're getting a little bit of an inside look at the designer's mindsets in terms of how they tackle these types of design issues, which is really, really cool. And it's talking about literally everything: equipment, starting positions, river, the stamina you have to deal with, and goes through all of them. So again, at the end of the day, this entire document is going to come in at just over 100 pages of information. You've also got alternate rewards for solo and cooperative campaigns. So coffers of gold, building an army, mortal tools, many tiles, many possibilities it even mentions. And then we move into a chapter number 5 here for artifacts and antagonists. So I'm going to read this just so we get a really quick overview of what chapter 5 has. But chapter 5 says the board game contains, the Monolith board game contains a wide range of equipment cards, from commonplace equipment to enchanted items, as well as a range of mortal and monstrous foes not represented in the role-playing game. These items are described here for use by the players and the game master for those wishing to bring the content of the board game to the role-playing arena. So this is where you want to use content that's in the board game in its physical form inside of the role-playing game, and have that continuity or understanding of what those particular items or equipment represent in the role-playing realm. So that's what's going to, blow open a whole bunch of wonderful piles of text per different items that you have inside the board game. So again, just meshing all these things together in a really cool way, more options for play. So that really covers the entirety of the source book, and I can say right now that the quality of it is very good. There are some spots of artwork throughout the book as well, but the majority of it is great content to actually read and consume, and also just learn a lot about. And of course, you can even see here is the lineup of all the Conan games they have for role-playing, which you can check out if you're kind of interested in that realm. But again, if you're talking about solo and cooperative play, which is the reason why I was excited, then chapter number 3 and 4 are really where you're going to want to be diving into. So now that we have covered fully the source book from Modiphius, I am very intrigued and very excited to open up and take a closer look at the geomorphic tiles that were created here and are used apparently in the role-playing game and also now in this solo and cooperative campaign. The very first geomorphic tile set we are going to take a look at here for Robert E. Howard's Conan, and this is coming from Modiphius Entertainment in terms of the creators of these tiles. This is the Forbidden Places and Pits of Horror tile pack. All right, are you guys ready for this? We are going to take a look at each and every one of these tiles in the Forbidden Places and Pits of Horror set. And of course, these tiles are double-sided, so there's going to be great artwork on both sides to check out. So here's the first side, and again, the dividing lines between these tiles are going to vary. They're not always going to be the same. And what I mean by that is there's a faint line going across the middle, a faint line going across this way, and 4 dots representing the 4 areas on this board. Not all boards are going to be sitting or situated in that type of a structure. Some of them are going to be a little bit different, and I won't really be talking too much about that as I go along because I'll likely be too impressed by what I'm seeing on the table artwork wise. So first off, we're going to flip this one to the opposite side to see what it looks like as another option. Now that is pretty cool. So what we have here is, oh, that's really awesome actually. We got ourselves a tomb in what looks like inside of a pyramid, and you can see the glow coming inside on this tile. Looks really well done, and again, it's very dark in all other areas of the tile, so it really brings out that brightness factor inside what looks to be a pyramid or a tomb. So we're moving right along here to another tile, a completely different type of terrain here. And again, it looks more like a swamp in terms of the location. Flipping this over to the opposite side, we've got a, oh wow, like a throne room area here. So again, very different. Again, having all these different types of varying areas that are so different from each other is going to be great for individuals that want to create their own solo and cooperative scenarios. You're going to have all kinds of options at your disposal when you blend this with your Conan products from before. Now, I absolutely love the winter tiles. There's something about them that just, I don't know. I'm not like you think, I guess because I'm Canadian, maybe that's why I like the winter, but really in real life, I don't like the winter as much as I might like, but I sure like the way it looks. And this tile just looks awesome. This scene looks really cool. It kind of looks like a pathway, and you can see the faint lines. They've done a really good job of dividing the tile up, but also not making those dividing lines, take away from the gorgeous artwork that you're seeing on the table as well. Flipping this over to the opposite side, you have a completely different tropical, kind of rainforest-esque type location here. That's awesome. Statues and crates, some blood there in the middle. Again, very thematic. Totally different situation going on here. We're now indoors. So again, very different. Again, dividing lines in a different layout this time. There's 3, it looks like 3 large quadrants here. So very cool. I thought they might stick all the same. Whoa. Didn't expect this. There's actually, that's really cool, an indoor-outdoor type tile split in half, so you can go from an outside area inside of a building. That's pretty awesome. I didn't actually expect that. Oh, that's because they're half tiles. Ha! Fooled me. Thought it was all part of one tile. So that's pretty cool because that's very modular of them to do that. So then you've got your, oh my gosh, look at this stuff. You flip this over, totally different on the opposite side. Yep, some nice end caps for, butting up against the water or the ocean's edge. Super cool. I can see people that are extremely creative just going to town on trying to make some really unique and interesting layouts here. Another very cold environment here. Again, this would be great to merge in with that larger winter tile that I saw earlier. So very, very cool. On the opposite side, again, a very, very different looking tile. Love the difference. It's just so dramatic. Oh my gosh, what is that? That is a creature of some type. It looks like a giant rib cage of something. And then you actually got a tent. Someone's living inside of this thing for shelter. That's pretty crazy. Again, very cool. These ones are kind of looking like the pits, so maybe this is more so for the forbidden places or pits of horror. Again, I don't know which is which, but this is getting into the dark entryways inside of this temple, essentially. So you've got one here. Again, it's another half tile. Flipping it over, you've got some rainforest area. that you can explore on this side. On the opposite side here, another one of those really cool passageways in and out of different areas or buildings. What looks to be inside of a town area. Pretty awesome. And next up, we got some more very creepy looking crypt type setups here. Something where you probably don't want to be exploring too long. And we'll flip this one over. Again, some more of the forests. Ah, look at that. We got ourselves a nice pool area there. I shouldn't say it's a pool because it's definitely not a pool, but we got a bridge. Very awesome. Loving this. This is a great set. You get a lot for just one of them anyway. And then you've got, is this a large one? It looks like a giant one, yeah. So you have these large tiles here going back to the big ones. Again, you can see the dividing lines are very different. So in this particular case, everywhere you see these darkened circles is one of the locations you can essentially stand in inside of this zone. Flipping this over to the opposite side, very different terrain on the other side here as well. Cool, cool. And then again, more of that winterized terrain, broken up into different quadrants. Whoa, check that out. Now that is pretty awesome as well. Liking this so far, very impressed. And then finally another one here. I think this is the last one. Nope, there's one hiding underneath. There's even more. And oh, look at that. The staircase going all the way up and a big library with the, oh, I love the shadows in this. It's so fantastic. It just makes everything pop that much more. That's a really clean looking one too. I don't know what it is about the winter scene ones. Whenever there's like an actual something in focus besides the trees already make it look like there's depth to this shot for some weird reason because of the winter setting. But this looks so crisp over here. Fantastic job on the tiles. Really happy. Oh, that's creepy. There's what looks to be like a mummy or a pharaoh just kind of laying there in the center. Pretty awesome. And is that just gold strewn about? Kind of looks like it all over the throne here. Very cool. So that was the Forbidden Places and Pits of Horror Geomorphic Tile Set for Conan. So if you're looking to pick up a tile set, you've now seen all sides of this one, but we're not done yet. There is another tile set. The next one is the Perilous Ruins and Forgotten Cities Geomorphic Tile Set. So let's go ahead and remove the shrink wrap off of this one and take a look at each and every tile. All right, here we go. We're starting off with one that already looks absolutely awesome, and this is a very cool and very different tile than anything we've seen so far. This is a full-size tile right here. We'll flip it over to the opposite side. Nice. We have a crossroads in the middle of what looks to be a peaceful forest. Isn't that nice? Nothing perilous or threatening about that at all. Or at least it's a little bit ominous because it likely will turn into something pretty nasty. Then we've got another, oh, that's pretty awesome. Again, the detail on some of these tiles go beyond just nature and into a lot of items and stuff on, especially this one's very busy. There's, if you really look at it, there's a lot of columns. There looks to be potentially kind of booby traps set up here. There's coins on the ground. There's grates, it looks like hidden entryways. There's scaffolding type situations going on here with boards everywhere. Very interesting for sure. So we'll just continue on past this one, flip it over, and there we go. Some more different tiles in terms of moving in amongst the countryside or the forest area. And you got broken wagons all over the place. Ah, we got ourselves a fort here, so maybe we're gonna get some tiles that can build out a fort. That seems pretty cool. So the cornerstone of one of these forts with some a barn or some type of village inside of it, maybe some type of storage. Moving to the back side of this one, we've got the bridge. Ah, yes, I'm remembering this from the scenarios. So this is a bridge, one half of the bridge, of course, that will likely have a lot of combat going on across it. Next up, another corner to one of these giant fort setups. Again, very cool looking. And there is a nice break between the bridges where things have not panned out so cool. And what's really awesome, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's all this fog, but below the fog line is actually trees, kind of giving you, again, that depth of like being up on a platform and potentially falling down into that area below. So that's pretty cool. Flipping this over, I don't know if I showed this other side just yet. I believe I did. Double check. Yes, we already saw that side. So this is what is new here. That is certainly an area I don't want to spend too much time in. Again, another piece to the fort. We're going to go ahead and flip this over. Oh, look at that. That's pretty awesome. Very cool, very different than anything we've seen so far in this tile set. This is also very different. Interesting, very much an inside piece to the fort. So probably can build quite the setup here with these tiles in terms of a fort. That would be pretty awesome. It looks like there's just tons of them. Again, another wall piece here, another bridge that we can potentially use. Beautiful, again, and little small details inside of each of these to kind of look at, kind of get lost in them a little bit. Oh, look at that, a little kind of, what is that? That kind of looks like the outside of a castle area maybe, or could be something totally different. Oh, wow. Now that has a lot going on. Boxes and crates all over the place. Very cool. Very cool indeed. Very, like, overall, I'm really impressed. Like, I was thinking that these tile sets would be, you know, pretty high level and generic, like just in the forest, just something. I didn't actually know there would be a lot of scenic sets in this thing. Really impressed with how they've, you know, they've merged all this in. It's very, very nice. And they certainly give you lots of options to play around with, which is just fantastic. You got different scenes that are set in the nighttime, some are set in the daytime. The shadows look fantastic. Like, very good. Very, very good. Nice attention to detail all the way around. Like, look at this thing just glowing off the table. Now, again, I can tell you right now, the camera's not doing this justice for some of these tiles. The darkness level and the kind of the, I don't even know the word to describe it, but really it's very rich. The darkness and this gold here laying around, it's kind of popping straight up off the tile. Doesn't necessarily seem to be coming across on camera as rich, but these are fantastic off camera as well. There's another outdoors scene as we've seen before. There's another chunk of a mask or a statue that has fallen. We're getting back to those solid large tiles now. So these are the big ones. So again, an underground chamber. Looks like there's some blood there, so somebody didn't have something go so right for them. Flipping this over to the opposite side, it looks like that's the other half of the bridge that we saw earlier to connect if you want to. And of course, that's really cool because when you think about it, you can actually have two of these large pieces with a connecting bridge, or throw that middle piece in where there's a break in the bridge, and now your bridge is severed. Very interesting. And again, we got more pieces here for the fort on one side. That is totally different. So we got ourselves like columns leading up to what could be kind of a, you know, some kind of ancient building found inside the forest. Very awesome. Again, the divine line's very different on this particular tile. Another one very similar to that, but a very different artistic take on it. Again, what looks to be leading into some type of building, but kind of looks like something on the outside of an ancient ruin. Oh my, these are crazy. So this could be the inside centerpiece area of the fort, potentially. I could see that. So I might be able to even build that out at some point, which would be pretty cool. And then we've got, whoa, that is different for sure. So you kind of got some entryways in here with this giant, like this, very, very different. These are so different. I didn't expect them to be so varied. And there we go, the front gates of the fort, or maybe another backdoor entrance of the fort. But again, graphics wise, fantastic all the way along. So these are really going to sit well up against the board game in terms of putting these side by side and integrating them and trying to make something of them in terms of the solo and cooperative play. So that is going to do it, guys. That is a full-on look at the Monolith Sourcebook. Again, Modiphius and Monolith kind of coming together there to create something, and Modiphius at the helm in terms of actually creating it and using something that's already out there in the wild that is only playable in a multiplayer fashion, but now able to be played in a solo and cooperative fashion. And whenever companies move in that direction and they do it as well as they seem to have put the effort in to build this, I get excited, especially because it's a product that I picked up years ago and am now just rediscovering this whole angle that I never saw on it. So again, hopefully it was an interesting look at the Geomorphic Tile Sets, which can also be used in a role-playing fashion as well as the solo and cooperative campaigns, also for creating your own scenarios. And the source book, hopefully it was a good information to decide whether or not these are products you'd like to pick up to enhance the Conan experience that you may already own. Again, If you don't own any of the Conan experience, again, I will remind you guys that there is an upcoming Kickstarter, of which I don't know the date, coming from Monolith, what seems to be potentially a take 2 on Conan, maybe a season 2 worth of content. And I imagine at that point in time, if you haven't picked anything up and you want to, you'll have the availability to do so at that point in time. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap up this unboxing or feature product look at Conan, the Sourcebook, and Geomorphic Tiles. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.